TV. So wherever in the world you are very welcome to a venue which has welcomed Formula One since 2004 and celebrates its Grand Prix number 19 tomorrow. Let's have a look at the countries that we will visit in this longest ever Formula One season of 23 rounds, which begins at Bahrain International Circuit. There's the Outer Loop, there's the Grand Prix track, there's the Endurance track, Grand Prix track, which is 3.3 miles long, 5.4 kilometers, there are 15 turns, and there's very nearly 17 meters of elevation all the way up to one of the best overtaking spots of the year at turn 4. It is action-packed, it is thrilling, and here are the tyres available to everyone. A lot of running yesterday on the soft, so I think we're heading to soft and hard in the Grand Prix. Certainly the soft tyre off the start line is always going to give you an advantage. It's the C3, the C2, and the C1 for everyone in the field. Live pictures as we make our way past the very entertaining go-kart track and full car parks as well. This used to be an event where there were a few students that poked around. Now there are so many people pouring in. They will be doing so all the way through once again, as you would expect. Glorious temperatures, 28 degrees. It is 41 degrees on track. And it is another glorious day for motor racing as we edge ever closer. What a tantalizing session we had late last night under the floodlights of this venue. This is the last chance though. This is the last opportunity to make the final tweaks after over a day's running, 24 hours over in testing, and then you have free practice 1, 2, and we arrive here with the heat haze down at turn 1. Now, this is the last session before qualifying. Great to have your company, and we will welcome you to the back row of the main grandstand to commentary box 31. And we say thanks very much for joining us. I'm Alex Jakes, joined by Jolyon Palmer, once again, former Renault Formula One driver. And Jolyon, it has been an intriguing weekend to say the least so far.
It's been a really buzzy weekend, hasn't it? So many different dynamics. The drum and bass was playing as we turned up to the track this morning. Yes. The grandstands are filling out as well. So there's a real buzz about the first Grand Prix of any season, but particularly this year, largely because of Aston Martin topping the day yesterday with Fernando Alonso. And we kind of had a bit of a spoiler last week with testing. We knew they'd be quick. But Aston Martin sort of stole the headlines from Nico Hülkenberg's return at Haas. He was rapid yesterday as well. And many of the midfield teams look like they might be able to throw their hat into the ring of upsetting the big boys. So we'll see today in this session a little bit more if the big teams can respond, because there might be a few upsets on the cards.
Oh, that sounds a fine way to start the season. I like 2 boxes. You know what? A little bit of history with F1 TV with 3 boxes. So let's go triple box and bring in Sam Collins, who is at the Media and Technology Centre back in the UK. Sam, it is getting ever more exciting as we approach the qualifying hour.
I'm absolutely surrounded by screens full of numbers and data. I'm really looking forward to getting going on this. I think there's an awful lot to learn in this session in the build-up to qualifying.
Excellent. We have eyes everywhere, we have data everywhere, and we have, I believe, Will Buxton wandering to the end of the pit lane in a few moments' time. But before we get to him, we're checking in with Carlos Sainz. We heard a few moments ago the differing approaches to the Ferrari drivers and what they have found. But let's check in with Mr. Buxton, who has made his way down to the pit lane, awaiting the green light.
I have indeed, boys. Welcome to pit exit with the red light, which is about to turn green. And whilst for the first 2 practice sessions of this all-new 2023 Formula One season, you already would have cars lined up at the end of the pit lane. Today, you have none. And as we look down the pit lane, there doesn't seem to be much sign of anybody actually showing up. Green light is on. The session has begun. But with it not being all that representative, there's not an immediate rush to get out on track. And as I say that, I'm proved to be instantaneously wrong, because look, here comes the McLaren, JP, just down there. It looks like Lando Norris, of course, that McLaren with so much work to do after a very disappointing pre-season, as he floors it and almost takes out JP as well.
5 points, 1 conservative launch.
In race trim, maybe even in quali trim, than we had feared they might. Some people placing them last, some people, almost everybody placing them in the bottom 3 teams, actually on the basis of yesterday, looking very much like they will be mid-pack. But Lando, the first driver out on track, and so far, the only driver out on track.
Thank you very much, Will Buxton, who has made his way down to the end of the pit lane. We're riding on board with Lando Norris.
I'll tell you something about McLaren.
Please do.
Lando was 9th yesterday, and by all accounts, they looked way better than they did last week in testing.
Yeah.
He was 9th, but still was the 7th quickest team. So many individuals from teams managed to get ahead. He's behind, of course, the Aston Martin, Red Bull, Ferrari, Haas, Alpine were ahead, Mercedes were ahead. So even though he was 9th on the standings, there were 6 cars still quicker than the McLaren. But it's so close, as always, in that midfield pack. And a little bit of fuel load, a bit of engine mode will make all the difference between you being best of the rest, which may well be 5th right now, 5th best team, and being right towards the back.
That is key. It is not a flurry of activity, as Lando Norris described. Speaking to those in the paddock who think McLaren are about the 7th fastest car out there. So the problem is that Lando Norris, not the problem, the advantage is that Lando Norris mighty around this circuit.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally where they were yesterday then, the 7th quickest car. And people have been like, the deep dive says that I think they're the 7th quickest car. Now you just look at the times. Lando's got an ability, though, to drag more.
And launch feedback, you were target -1.
A rapid driver. He's got such a proven pedigree, but he couldn't match up to Lando for whatever reason in this McLaren. He's so up to speed. And Oscar Piastri looks like he's had a slightly sticky start as well, with such a highly rated rookie coming in, F2 champ, F3 champ, Formula Renault champ before. He's won everything. But he's had a slightly sticky start yesterday, a little bit slower, a few little moments. You'd expect it from a rookie.
No other cars on track to worry about.
He's hungry to get going again. The only driver out on track.
The only one running out there, reminder to you, if you're getting up to speed with Formula One this year, this set of conditions, as Lando scatters the pigeons on the main straight, the set of conditions not representative of where we'll be running for qualifying later on, which will begin at 6 o'clock local time. The track temperature 41 degrees, the air temperature 27, as Lando Norris, the only driver out there, and therefore hogging the limelight with this very, very interesting change they've made to the car, I believe in Austin last year, where they've got the panels on the car which can change sponsor as they go around. So latest technology on the track, and also for the sponsorship as well.
Innovative, really innovative. It blew my mind when I saw it. And Lando with a little slide. Track conditions right now, not very good. Temperature's so much higher, 28 degrees now. It'll drop later on. Bit of wind picking up as well, and of course maybe some dust on the track as well, some sand that needs to be cleaned up in these opening laps. So that's why no one else is rushing out.
Let's head down to Will Buxton, who is outside the garage you're looking at, Aston Martin.
Yes, indeed. And Lance Stroll, having just lowered himself into the car, we were talking in the pre-show about Lance Stroll kind of not being able to get out of the car by himself. But as he lowered himself in, obviously the elbows go up and you lower yourself down. His right hand still very gingerly looked after as it sort of he pulled it in around him. But yeah, getting in on his own. So all appearing to be okay, as the team said. We'll be in for FP3, looking to go into qualifying. And actually, his medium run pace yesterday, his race run pace on that medium tyre was quicker than I believe the soft run pace was for the Mercedes and the Ferraris. And that is why Aston Martin are looking like such a threat this weekend.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buxton. So, Jolien, we saw a lot of onboard footage of Lance Stroll yesterday, trying to accommodate the break. Give us an idea of what he'll be feeling the early afternoon as he jumps back into the car.
It's really difficult to... You can never judge someone else's pain. This is the thing with... We can look from the outside and it looked like, he wasn't holding the wheel in a conventional manner. You've got to be, in complete harmony with the Formula One car to get the most out of it. He seemed to be doing that.
Okay, no traffic, brakes are good. Just remember mode push, and reset big adjuster.
His thumbs through the thumb holes, as you can see Hulkenberg is with his left hand there, turning it with his your thumbs through the thumb holes and the normal grip of a Formula One steering wheel. So he took them off, started pushing the wheel up, and then we saw actually no hand for a very short bit of time on the main straight. clearly just trying to give the wrists a bit of a breather from just a constant bit of tension, I guess, gripping the wheel. Now, it looks pretty unideal to be driving a Formula One car like that. Of course, it's not ideal. But Lance has said he thinks it'll be okay. He was just precautionary. He was trying to not put too much stress, not trying to put unnecessary stress on his wrist. It's a really difficult one. If he says it's fine, Aston Martin says it's fine. His pace was actually pretty good on one lap. What do you do? Go for it again, and he's the best judge of his own health, really.
Strange situation for Lance Stroll to be in, as Hulkenberg goes over that bump that we've seen producing a few moments here in the last couple of days in pre-season testing as well as the practice running as well, which we're concluding with this final hour of running. And Hulkenberg certainly over one lap yesterday, looking very, very happy. The race pace potentially a vastly different story.
So Nico was saying yesterday, what a shame it was that he was so quick, because now everyone's expecting Haas just to be this strong. And of course, they were this strong last year as well. K-Mag was the comeback king. Year out, came back in, 5th place on the first drive back at this circuit, scored big points. And Hulkenberg's drive yesterday, without Alonso topping the times, he
would have been the headline.
Would have been the headline. But because Fernando topped the times in the Aston Martin, people are sort of not really speaking about Hulkenberg being 5th on qualifying simulation pace in a Haas. It was a stunning recovery. And I know how quick he is.
Okay, Lando, the issue in turn 10 was rear lock. So the suggestion is to do 4 turn 10 plus 1 on the bow as well as the toggle.
Nico said that it's a shame everyone thought they were going to be so quick, because the race pace isn't as strong as the quali pace. So he's trying to play down the expectations, as so many people are right now, because it looked stunning on one lap pace, but of course the points are scored out on a Sunday.
22 years ago to this day, Fernando Alonso making his F1 debut with Minardi, the team that was eventually purchased by Red Bull, became Toro Rosso, now known as AlphaTauri. And Oscar Piastri wasn't even born at that point in the same city back in 2001. It is the longest ever Formula One career by any metric you measure it by.
It must be such a weird feeling for Piastri.
Yeah.
He's only ever known Fernando Alonso being a Formula One driver, or part-time Le Mans race winner, or Indy 500 chaser. But to now be racing someone that has been in Formula One your entire life is quite something. And it's quite a surreal moment as well for rookies when you have that, and you're always aspiring. You have your idols as you're growing up, and then suddenly you're thrust into the racing action against them. It's quite a surreal moment, I think. Very quickly you get into the, I don't care about it's Fernando Alonso, or I don't care it's Lewis Hamilton or whatever. Your elbows out and you're racing with them. But there is always that moment where you have to pinch yourself and think, this is me.
I'm here.
So we see from the other cars' data, tail 6, 7, 9, 13, and possibly headwind in 11.
Get a full season debut for Nick de Vries, who's going to make his full season debut at 28. Logan Sargent's going to be the first American driver on the grid since Alexander Rossi in 2015, and the 5 starts he had for Marussia at the end of the 2015 season. And Oscar Piastri, you heard his racing CV from Jolyon a few moments ago. Very, very impressive, winning every championship possible on the way up to Formula One. And Magnussen slots in to 3rd position. Magnussen was a story 1 year ago. The super sub signed 9 days before the season started, scoring a fantastic 5th place after some late race retirements. And that really was the highlight of the season. Mick Schumacher has departed the team. In comes Hulkenberg. In comes a challenge. A little bit of history between those two, but they're veterans. And we just...
And new brakes reminder, already checked.
Yeah, radio's good.
Okay, cool.
intensity I maybe had in the early 20s.
I think you do. I think especially when you think your career's sort of done in Formula One,
Which they both would have done.
They both would have done. Had a decent stint, and then particularly Hulkenberg, 35 now. So I don't think he was expecting to to particularly come back. In fact, I spoke to him last year, and he flat out said he didn't think he'd be back on the grid, even though he's had some very good super sub cameos.
Yeah, for your info, the seat cracked a bit, like it used to last year. Okay, understood. Okay, understood.
So that's the message from Carlos Sainz reporting back. Seat cracking a bit, referring to last year. Charles Leclerc had a bit of difficulty pulling out of the pits with the clutch yesterday. They seem to get on top of that by the end of the day, but that's Sainz's early feedback.
Very, very thin carbon fibre. That Sainz is on an outlap, so I assume it's as he's getting in the car or something like that he's there's just a slight creak and a crack maybe in the seat. So they'll look at that later on. Yeah, I think Formula One life is just so full of pressures and tensions, and the rivalries are all hammed up to the max, especially now in the Drive to Survive era, when they're even if you don't feel like you've got a rivalry, they're making one out of it. And then you go on the other side of the action. You're looking on from the outside, and you think, oh, maybe I didn't need to act like that all the time. You get a sort of different perspective on things.
I think I'd like to try some into braking.
Copy that. Head 6 or an EB level question?
We'll try pit 6.
Copy that.
How much? No, we don't want it. No worries. I'll try pit 6.
Head 6 is good for us.
And I think they're just more relaxed, enjoying their racing a little bit more.
On track at the moment, the Mercedes pair, George Russell, a one-time Grand Prix winner, taking that only win for the team last year in Brazil in spectacular fashion, goes half a second ahead of Lando Norris. Lewis Hamilton on a better lap, though, Sector 1 and Sector 2. And to help tell the drivers apart, they've put fluorescent shade on the halo as he goes half a second clear of his teammates on a 1:33.5. And now, having heard from Sainz and Leclerc slightly earlier on in the broadcast, Charles Leclerc goes.
I think overcooked a bit on the Mac barrel for this track temp anyways. I think it's best to go back at least one step forward.
Yeah, we'll come back one step then. Yeah, come forward one step.
Pole and disappointment for Ferrari, as they would have been expecting to be in the mix. They certainly were expecting to be in the mix for the pole position fight after testing. So we've seen Mercedes on track, we've seen Ferrari on track, and yet to see any times from Alpine, which is where Will Buxton has wandered to.
Indeed so. Esteban Ocon is in his car, but with almost 15 minutes of the session. Got to say, no time on the board yet for Alpine. It seems odd, doesn't it? First weekend of the season, only 3 days of pre-season testing. You'd think they want every second out on track they could possibly get, and yet he still sat in his car. When I came down, Pierre Gasly was nowhere to be seen on his side of the garage, but I've just seen on the big screen up there that Pierre Gasly is on that side of the garage, and when we walk around, we'll see him as well. But it just shows you, doesn't it, how bizarre the format of this opening weekend is, that these morning sessions.
Approaching wind phase 1 right now. Wind phase 1. Intensity is a bit lower than before.
All of the data that they need, despite the fact that testing is more limited than it has ever been in the history of this sport. Either, again, and this is something we'll talk about all weekend, this team is supremely confident, or this session is quite simply so unrepresentative as to be not worth going out on track for as much time as we might automatically assume that they would need to or want to.
Thank you, Will. Carlos Sainz has set the fastest first sector of anyone out there. And after the long winter break, it's just great to have any F1 on your TV.
So Ferrari and Mercedes, two teams scratching their heads yesterday.
Yeah.
With very split drivers as well. Sainz struggled, had a big spin in FP1. Leclerc was not too shabby, ended up fourth of Alonso. Sainz through, and he's going to go quicker than Hamilton at the moment. 2 tenths up after 2 sectors, a little bit squirmy through turn 13. Mercedes, Hamilton very downbeat yesterday, said, I don't think we can beat Red Bull unless we change the whole concept of the car, which is a huge thing, given everything that Mercedes have put into this idea of development. Russell more upbeat, but Russell also a chunk off his teammate yesterday as well, down in 13th, so a big split. And look, Sainz actually didn't go ahead of Hamilton on that time. So Hamilton, Sainz and Leclerc separated by 7 hundredths of a second. All so close. But they all think that the Red Bull is going to be up the road for them. And maybe the Aston Martin. Stroll's about to start a flying lap, so we'll get a compare right now.
And we'll be able to check in on wrist cam to see how Lance is doing. 8th gear, about to haul on the anchors as he goes over the bumps into turn 1.
Conventional. Still holding the wheel with through the thumb holes. A little bit of oversteer through the apex of turn 1. One lap he could do it anyway. It was the long runs, whereas lap after lap after lap, constantly turning the wheel that was harder for Lance. Neck and neck with Hamilton's top time through the first sector, even though it didn't look great through turn 1. Track conditions nowhere near what they will be, and he's really hesitant trying to turn it into turn 8. Couldn't commit to steering lock, otherwise the rear end would have come round on him. And again, the temperature's higher, bit of a tailwind down into turn 8 as well, so missing some downforce.
And into one of 3 DRS zones around the circuit, the driver who scored a 3rd place finish here in 2020 at the Sakhir Grand Prix, somewhat overshadowed by the fact that his teammate won the race. But he's got form around here, delivered that day, and now on the Grand Prix layout, which has been used traditionally as the event here. We had the endurance layout that we used where they go beyond turn 4 and loop back, and then we had the in 2020 the outer loop, which was terrific. But this is a great circuit. It is a lap that Stroll has completed. We've ridden on board all the way around, and the time fading away from the Canadian driver who matched Hamilton's first sector but couldn't maintain the pace on the soft rubber. And so we've seen Mercedes, Ferrari, we've seen Aston Martin, and this is just a replay of Lance Stroll heading down to turn 1. In a moment, climbing the hill, applying the power, there's going to be the correction.
Just a small amount of throttle input, 2nd gear, enough to kick the car into a small oversteer. And it costs you all the way then, because you're spiking a bit of rear tyre temperature up towards turn 4 as well. Not the cleanest of laps there for Stroll.
Now, as he tries to get himself up to speed, we're yet to see Red Bull out on track. But Will Buxton has wandered outside the garage.
I have indeed. And I also have a question for you.
Go on.
After all the running yesterday, who do you think is the driver that had the right to be the most disappointed?
Ooh, that is an interesting question. Go on.
I'd argue it's that man. I'd argue it's the world champion. You think back to testing 1 week ago, this team looked ominously fast, godlike, unbeatable, night and day ahead of the field. No problems with the car, no gremlins to talk of. And yet yesterday he was unhappy with the bouncing of the car, with the balance, with the setup, issues all the way throughout the day. Couldn't get the same pace as a teammate Sergio Perez. We're used to seeing a half-second, 6/10 gap between Verstappen and Perez, but usually it's Verstappen that's in the ascendant.
Okay, good job on the gears. Take it easy where you are, and then a bit of waving after turn 10, after turn 13.
And he admitted last night with a lot of work to do, and yet here we are 20 minutes almost into the session, still not a wheel put out on the track. I'm not saying these guys are in trouble and that we should look beyond them for the front row of the grid, or indeed that Max Verstappen won't start with a blistering pole position. But yesterday certainly was not as error-free or as worry-free as Teston was.
Thank you very much, Will. Down there at the World Champions, their first Constructors' Championship last year since 2013. The team very proud of that one. It's Hamilton, Sainz, and the driver you're looking at, Charles Leclerc, in 3rd position of the running order at the moment. Esteban Ocon's just done the fastest first sector of anyone so far. Charles Leclerc improving in the middle part of the lap. Things not entirely how Red Bull want them, but they remain, Jolyon Palmer, the absolute firm favourites to be on the front of the grid by the end of the qualifying hour.
I can't believe Max was the most disappointed driver.
No, I was
yesterday.
I think K-Mag wouldn't have been delighted he didn't get his lap right. I think both of the AlphaTauri drivers would have been slightly concerned with what they had underneath them.
Sainz ending up 6/10 away from his teammate in a struggling Ferrari. He was down in 13th. I didn't expect Will to go with
No.
go with the big title favourite as the most disappointed driver, but I see what he's getting at. He ended up just 2,000ths quicker than Checo in short run pace, but we come to.
Okay, Lance, wind information. It's around 15 kph tail through 6-7 and down to 14.
Let's hear from Lance Stroll. This is an exclusive on F1 TV.
Okay, Lance, wind information. It's around 15 kph tail through 6-7 and down to 14.
So that's just giving you more of a picture of what the drivers hear as they go through this session, because you might be sitting at home wondering, going, what is going on? They're remaining in the garage for a while. We're not seeing a lot out there. That's the information that the engineer is relaying to driver, and the wind can massively affect you around the swing.
Yeah, we went on board with Lance, didn't we, as he came through 6-7. It was all scrappy, couldn't turn it into turn 8, and that is just a little bit of push with tailwind. That just means you haven't got the downforce on the car so much, and it just becomes harder to turn in and harder to have confidence in the rear end. So we hear so much wind chatter, and it's because the cars are so sensitive to a change in wind direction or wind speed. It's important information.
So peering beyond the banks to turn number 4, and Fernando Alonso, who celebrates 22 years in Formula One, and he has set a roasting pace there in the first sector.
Here we go. Alonso's on track. Look how much track he used into turn 8 as well. The only other driver I saw doing that last week was Lewis Hamilton, abusing the curb on the left-hand side down towards turn 8. Alonso really.
Let me know if you want to do any flapper test.
No. Copy. So let's go through the pit lane for start, end of the pit lane.
He's looked good ever since he got in this car. He's on the fastest first sector. On the soft tyre, same as that of Hamilton, Sainz, Leclerc, everyone at the top end.
And that is a mighty second sector as well. We go driver's eye view with the 2-time world champion, who hasn't been on a pole position in Formula One since Germany in 2012. And in that 2012 season, one of the things that kept him in the title battle to the very end, he eventually finished runner-up, was an ability to come alive and take advantage when the moment presented itself. The fastest driver on track, once again, is Fernando Alonso.
Well, that's the thing. We're talking about maybe one of the best racers out there in the field as well. He's such a complete package, still at 41 years of age. His ability to maneuver his car on the first laps of Grand Prix. He can gain a couple of places on average in the season. His race starts have been amazing in his entire career. You go back to the Renault days in 2005 and 6, and he was launching through the field on the opening laps. So if that car's got a sniff of a podium, then they've got the man in it to probably put together the optimum race to get there. And right now, he's gone to the top of the times again, ahead of the Mercedes, ahead of the Ferrari, on the same tyre, similar track conditions. They are looking good. There's a bit of some small paddock whispers that they were running quite light yesterday. Alonso's race run was really impressive. It was on a par with Verstappen, and look, Max on a first up. He's on the hard tyre, so both Red Bulls actually are out on the hard tyre. It's not going to be a true comparison here, but yesterday it was on the soft tyre race run, and they were miles clear of the Ferraris and the Mercedes. Just a couple of whispers that they might be running a little bit lighter and flattering themselves. We'll only find out. Well, we'll find out part 1 of it later on in qualifying. Part 2 tomorrow.
You'll have to watch to the end of the Grand Prix. Not that I imagine that you'll need much persuading at home if you are joining us for the 3rd and final practice session. So Verstappen in 5th on that hard tyre. Perez 4/10 off his effort. Hamilton's gone over the line to improve his time, but not his position. That's a 1:33.495. And over 3.5 tenths of a second away from the Aston Martin. And although the noises out of Aston Martin over the winter were good, it is very unusual.
Alonso's P1 33.1 on the soft.
Fastest car, they could possibly have the fastest car, but it might need a little bit of driver difference to make sure that's the case later on today.
Well, the development rate last year was the best of the whole pack. They started off, they were awful at the start of the year, Aston Martin. Vettel was out with COVID this time last year, and Nico Hülkenberg was making one of those super sub appearances, and they were just trolling around at the back. By the end of the season, they were decent points contenders at pretty much every Grand Prix, and you probably immediately got an upgrade in the driver. As good as Sebastian Vettel is and has ever been, Fernando Alonso, right now, I think he's adding another little bit of performance there. Then they've got a whole new design concept. Dan Fallow's now technical director, formerly of Red Bull, his first car that he's able to really put a stamp on. So there's logic as to why they might be able to make a big jump. It's not just same team and they've just turned it around 1 year to the next. There's a lot of different components that have changed amongst the same organisation. So it's a very big surprise to see such a big jump, but you could see the workings of how it might have come about.
That's all things Aston Martin. We can now bring in Sam Collins to talk all things tyres around a very abrasive track that demands a lot of them.
Well, I think we're looking at the moment, Alex, at the overall top lap times, who's fastest, is the hype train real? Some of it's real. I'm not quite sure it's going to arrive fully on schedule as people expect. But I'm looking at the two Red Bulls. They've gone out, Perez and Verstappen have both gone out on the hard tyre. Now, they're the only two drivers to have done that in this session. And through all of the sessions yesterday, only two other drivers tried the hard tyres, and that was the two Williams drivers. Now, the reason for this is that the hard tyre is the favoured race tyre for this race weekend. It doesn't look like the soft tyre is going to last as long as people think, and the medium tyre really doesn't look to be a particularly good race tyre at all. So I think that's why you're seeing so many teams staying.
So just cool the engine a bit on this in-lap, cool the engine a bit so we've got headroom for a lay rubber and the start. The only fast car behind you is Hülkenberg 10 seconds back.
One-stop strategy for the Grand Prix. So Red Bull now clearly moving their attention from preparing for qualifying to preparing for the race tomorrow. And I think that's a crucial step. And if you look at Verstappen's fastest lap, 33.7 on that hard tyre, that is a warning shot right down the pit lane, because that's a really impressive lap on the hardest compound of tyre.
That is true. It's a really good lap considering there's 2 compounds offset. The hard tyre this year is slightly, well, the C1 hard tyre, which we have here, is a slightly softer version than the hard tyre we had here last year. So the gap shouldn't be as big as that, but we expect there to be at least another second to come off when he puts on the soft. So that would put Verstappen looking good out front. They're basically just burning up a set of hard tyres though now, aren't they? This is a bit of a futile run for Red Bull. They've not got full tanks. They're on low fuel. They're on a sort of similar run plan to everyone else on the soft, but they're just choosing to burn up a set of hards and save an extra set of softs at this stage. I'd say something I quite like about this season so far.
Go on.
This one,
I'm not sure.
Two and a half practice sessions that we've got.
This could be anything.
This could go anywhere, but I'm going to say the closest to the field. Again, we haven't really spoken about the whole field. Now, in the top 10 or top 11 at the moment, we have 8 different teams. Only the Haas, who were both out on the medium tyres, and we saw what Hülkenberg can do yesterday. They can jump up as well. And AlphaTauri, who are struggling a little bit. Everyone else is so close in that pack right now. You've got Albon up in 9th in a Williams. They're looking a bit better. The closeness of the whole field is good. All the teams together. We speak about Aston Martin making big steps, but Alpine weren't looking too shabby yesterday either with Pierre Gasly, Hülkenberg there as well. And last year, for a little reference, 7 cars were within a second of the pace at the end of FP3. Now we're only halfway through. But there are 15 cars within a second. Just shows how the field's closed up. Regs are working.
Encouraging times, if that is replicated in qualifying later on under the many floodlights. Carlos Sainz brings it back to the pits. You've got a shot there of his new team principal, Fred Vasseur, moving from Alfa Romeo to Ferrari to take on the most political, high-pressure team principal job in Formula One.
No grip.
Okay, we'll try again.
So just for so many years, the Achilles heel cost them in Monaco last year. across the multiple venues last year. But they will go in with a new strategist for this Grand Prix weekend and for this season. We're highlighting the world champion, Max Verstappen, currently in 5th place. But that hard tyre expected... Oh, let's hear the team radio first of all.
No grip. No grip. Okay, we'll try again.
Giampiero Lambesi on the radio. Familiar voice to us, but no grip to the message.
He was going for a second flyer on those hards and seemed to have a bit of traction issues coming out of the first corners there. So backed off it. Perez going again in the other Red Bull in the background there. He's improved his first sector as well. So the hard tyres able to give you grip for more than one lap in the hands of Perez and not in the hands of Verstappen. Maybe not preparing them right in the slow lap in between. Here comes Perez behind Max. Good push.
And through goes Perez. Not improving in the middle part of the lap, so we'll send it downstairs to Will Buxton, who's outside Aston Martin.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, there is your fastest man, Fernando Alonso, by 0.374 of a second. And the garage, as it has done all the way through this weekend, and as they did all the way through testing, still stoic. No big, rapturous smiles on any faces, just getting on with the job, because they know that they have the job to do this afternoon in qualifying and tomorrow in the race. And until this thing goes out in its pure racing form, none of us, even the guys in that garage, you've seen the data, have been working on this car for months now, none of us know for sure exactly what lies beneath that beautiful green exterior. We do know, though, the pressure will be on them to a certain extent. But I think they're just enjoying being the focus of attention for all the right reasons.
Okay, Oscar, out of turn 10, can we do a CSL? Purple C7 position 3 for that. Purple C7 position 3 will be 160 kph, 3rd gear.
I think if they're pushing in this heat, this temperature on those tyres, they might be thinking of trying to get through Q1 on the hard. I don't know, maybe that's one for you and for Sam to answer. Is that too much? Is their advantage, Red Bull's, that big that they could consider doing that?
Well, they're using up a set of hard tyres now, so it probably means that they're...
So, Checo, let's keep up the pace and then we'll go back out on this tyre set, give it a rebound mechanically. You happy with that?
Yep.
I don't think that's what they're doing, but what I do think is it's a pretty big flex from Red Bull, actually. But maybe it's their best lap of the year so far, but just on the hards to be that close to the pace right now.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I mean, we were talking about Max Verstappen in testing, doing the first day and a half and then not even turning up for day 3. That was a flex. Fernando Alonso goes out, does the best time of the morning, and then Max goes out on the hard. Yeah, I'll take it to within half a second of you, mate. It's a big flex.
Yeah, very impressive lap time for Max Verstappen. You can see a hard tyre amongst a sea of soft, and you can see what his teammate was able to do. A reminder that Sergio Perez's deficit to Max Verstappen on average across last season was 0.3 of a second. So more of that, and the most Verstappen-like lap we've seen from him. Trackside in testing, Jolien, the Red Bull looked like both drivers could do what they wanted with him. Remember, at the start of the year, Max just didn't have the front end that he wanted. It was Perez taking the early pole positions in Saudi Arabia. The car really looked good from the side of the track.
It just looked hooked up the entire time. We were out watching right at the end of testing when Checo was pumping in the best lap of the week. And the way that he's able to come through turn 11, quick left-hander, mullering apex curve, still hustling it in and having full confidence in the rear of the car is really impressive to watch. Whereas the comparison was with other teams and the midfielders generally were struggling to commit to using so much apex curve and entry curve and still turning it in with full confidence and speed. Others were just washing by with understeer. The AlphaTauri were probably the team that looked particularly weak on front end and just had to wait for throttle. The front runners generally were able to turn the car in really sharply without having to worry about snapping oversteer. Mercedes looked a little bit snappier, certainly when I was watching there in day 1 and 2. Hamilton was fighting the car quite a lot. Russell didn't look a lot better when he got in. And the Ferrari looked...
If you want to abort, happy to box. Just go recharge on, if you want to.
Yeah, I'm fitting. Shit tire anyway. Too much on the steer. I need more front.
Through the day yesterday, I think their hopes were just generally going downhill. I mean, they still thought that they were in the mix. They had a good test, but seeing more and more of the Red Bull pace and then a bit of the Aston Martin pace, I think it was a slight bit of reality check for Ferrari. Sainz particularly was unhappy with the car and had the big spin in FP1, said the car's got backwards from testing. Leclerc was happier. Right now, it looks like Sainz is back in the groove, and the two of them are split by just a few hundredths. But when Ferrari are head scratching and Mercedes are head scratching, you got to say Red Bull are looking pretty happy.
Yeah, concept-wise, Red Bull and Aston Martin not too far away, and those who have decided, if you're Ferrari, if you're Mercedes, the logic in going in a different design direction is that if you just copy Red Bull, you're going to take a long time to recover to the pace of Red Bull. They're always going to be that step ahead. So that's why they've been forced to stay out there. It's the same sort of logic that says you need your own works engine, dear, if you're going to compete. But a lack of understanding, even with over 24 hours of running before the season starts.
Well, let's just take this back a year, because we're in this new era of regulations. We're in the second year of it. And when the cars were all unveiled this time last year, everyone was expecting them to look kind of the same, because the rules were very prescriptive, and we thought we were heading towards cars looking the same. And the idea was the field would close up as a result. Everyone has the similar ideas, and there's no team leaping out front. And then they were unveiled, and you've got Ferrari looking very different to Red Bull. You've got Mercedes doing something completely innovative with their side pods and the rest of the design of the car. And then you're thinking, okay, that's all well and good. Wherever you're stacking up year one, Ferrari and Red Bull very, very close. But you've got 5 years of this car to develop into.
Yeah.
Where's your future going? How far can you develop into these concepts? And maybe it's a big maybe, because we haven't even had a qualifying session yet, but maybe this is just the start of a sign that whilst it was close between Red Bull and Ferrari last year, Red Bull have got much more open window into development in the future, and Ferrari are just finding a few closed doors there. Maybe.
So the height has been raised by 15 millimeters, and that has changed absolutely nothing. The working window.
Push and hold, overtake.
You told me boxing while you been I would have had to pit that map.
Apologies.
To raise the car came in to try and combat the porpoising. Charles Leclerc has fought for victories. He was very close in Singapore, but Ferrari looking to try. There was a speculation that maybe they'd adapted and they'd changed development earlier on, knowing that they couldn't win that title. But the adaptability, the broadness of certainly how they can run the floor, that is absolutely crucial to the speed and the potential dominance of the Red Bull. A reminder that the team, with the hands of that driver, set a new single season win record with 15. Sergio Perez adding 2 wins as well, including the Monaco Grand Prix.
And you wonder, given how much they were just cantering away with it last year, when could they shift the focus onto developing it next year? When could they look at the slight regulation tweaks and think, how are we going to maximize this? How are we going to develop the car and find more pace? If they have the car that many people, pretty much everyone, thinks is going to be the fastest to start, does that show that they had a little bit in hand at the end of last year, and they were just waiting to unleash something a little bit more this season? In theory, have the least amount of, well, they do have the least amount of wind tunnel time development time available. The cost cap breach has hit that a little bit more as well. So development time through the year.
Reminder to take it easy on braking turn 11. Reminder, take it easy on braking turn 11. Off yellow cone.
At their most vulnerable through the season.
Let's bring in Sam Collins, our technical analyst, into this conversation. Where do you stand on this, Sam?
I think Jolien actually just touched on it really nicely there. The penalty for the cost cap breach is this reduction in CFD and wind tunnel time. And that's really going to leave Red Bull with quite a difficult decision to make at some point in this season. If they start out really strongly, which it looks like they're going to, will they switch off development on this year's car and move it to next year's car and try to sort of manage the very limited resources they've got that way, or will they throw everything behind this year's car and really sacrifice themselves for next season? It's a challenging thing that they're going to have to manage. So it's all about how big their advantage could be. So perhaps those Italian sandbags from Ferrari could be deployed to perhaps trick Red Bull into doing something wrong. It's a bit of a conspiracy theory, and I'm not sure it's entirely right, but I do think Red Bull are going to have some tough decisions to make this season.
But if they've notched a number of victories, it certainly makes those decisions easier. We will find out. We will find out. Longest ever Formula One season, and the run-in especially is relentless all the way, including a first ever Grand Prix in Las Vegas, down the strip for over a mile. It'll be a fantastic spectacle. The penultimate Grand Prix of the year.
Have you ever been to Vegas?
Never been to Vegas. Have you been to Vegas?
No, never.
Okay.
Very much looking forward to it.
That's going to be.
It's going to be wild, isn't it? Imagine if we've got a title fight still on our hands.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If the title battle is still raging, we have had a classic Formula One season. That's what everyone wants. That's what everyone wants out there. Unless you're potentially, Red Bull.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to summarize where we're at, really. Red Bull would like there not to be a title fight by the time we get to Vegas. Everyone else would be chuffed if they were in a title fight by Vegas. That sums up the mood in the paddock.
That's where we are with 17 minutes to go before it really does start to count, before it gets very serious with qualifying to set the grid for the 57-lap race. It's a good first sector. Joe Guanyu on the soft tyres. Not too far away at all. And Valtteri Bottas as well, going very well through the first four corners of the track.
Track cleaning up a little bit through this hour as well. So these Alfa Romeos are the first cars out on a new set of soft tyres. Should be finding a little bit of pace. I was a little bit underwhelmed by Alfa Romeo yesterday. They looked like they could be the dark horses after testing. The car looked pretty good. They started the year really well last season as well and looked like they'd be in a position to take it on. They weren't bad yesterday, but just others in the midfield really were flaunting a little bit more. But this is a good lap from Joe.
He did finish one of the days on top after going for a low fuel run on the soft tyres.
Bottas has backed off, I think, on this lap, having done a decent first sector. So it's just Joe now to see what the Alfa Romeo can do. Can they launch up the timing screens?
So it's Stroll, Joe, Hamilton, the drivers who are fastest in all the separate sectors, past the commentary box and up to second position. The Chinese driver about to start his second season in Formula One, still called Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo, who haven't won a Grand Prix since 1951. This is their last season that they can change it before the Sauber name returns to Formula One, and then in 2026 they become out.
Who was their last winner?
I gave you 1951. Palmer.
I thought you had all the history of Alfa Romeo.
You're a demanding man. You're a demanding man. I don't actually have it to hand.
All the prep.
Let's bring in Sam Collins whilst I frantically Google.
I've been looking quite excitedly at this Alfa Romeo, actually. Guanyu been looking actually really strong compared to his teammate Valtteri Bottas. But the overall lap times, that lap time he just set of a 1:33.1 in his car, quicker than Bottas has managed on his run. But I think Bottas is about to go quicker. That's on quite a heavy fuel load comparatively to everybody else in the field, with the exceptions of the Ferrari. The Alfa Romeos are looking like they're 5 to 6 kilos heavier than everybody else in the field. So that lap time is actually particularly impressive, especially when you compare it to some of the other drivers and teams who are running on 15, 20 kilos of fuel when they leave the pits. The Alfa Romeos are leaving with 26, 27, though this sort of behaviour isn't going to improve those lap times, guys.
We should have had a punt. It was Fangio.
1951. It was gettable. The great Fangio. We've got plenty of new fans. So
Good improvement. Tied into 1-2.
2002, when it was taken on by Michael Schumacher, who added two more.
Good improvement. Tidy to 1-2.
So that was being spoken about from engineer to driver yesterday, about slightly changing the approach. It sounds like he's been able to do it again, and the man who didn't know if he'd be racing this weekend leads his teammate 0.2 of a second up the road. It's looking good at Aston Martin.
Yesterday, Fernando topped the times and was saying, let's just not get too excited.
Reminder to take it easy on braking turn.
We're going to go 1-2. We're going to go 1-2 tomorrow. And that's where they are right now. 0.2 between them. Stroll at the top. but he's used that second set of soft tyres. So there's going to be a flurry of further action in the last 14 minutes. Fernando Alonso still in the pits. Hamilton's just left in the Mercedes on the softs. Verstappen and Perez are the two that we really want to see because they've just been on the hard tyre so far. They've done good laps on those hards.
Let's give you some more exclusive radio with Alex
Reminder to take it easy on braking turn.
Yeah, that was all wrong. Massive front locking and just understeer through that whole stint from turn 1 to the final corner.
So not happy with front locking. The driver who at the start of the week said we're last, but we're a competitive last, looks slightly better than that at various different points. A driver who certainly in qualifying trim last year was very, very impressive.
I'll tell you who is really impressive is Logan Sargent.
You've been impressed by the American, haven't you?
I've been really excited by him, and I didn't really know what to make of Sargent this year. And let's not lock in our thoughts for the whole year so far, because we've seen some false dawns from rookies in the past, particularly on this track where they all know it very well and we've had testing. But Albon there, a little bit frustrated with the braking around pretty much the whole lap there. And I'd set a lap time to now be 11th on a new set of softs. Sargent's gone quicker by 2/10. And Sargent's been right on it with Albon the whole way through these 3 practice sessions. That is the last set of soft tyres they're going to throw on. So Sargent's going to end ahead unless Albon can find something on another flyer. He's gone again and not improving on this one. And bar he wasn't able to improve in FP2 yesterday on a second run. Sargent's been right there and slightly even ahead of Albon. We know how quick Albon is, so I've been really impressed. There's a guy that finished 4th in F2.
He did.
When you're not in the top 3 of F2 and you're moving up to F1, you're wondering.
I think that's a fair question. I also think not his defence, but I think it's worth saying that sometimes, often the table doesn't lie. But I do think that he just concentrated on getting the super license points across the line rather than going for out-and-out performance.
Not many people get the chance, though, because you've got to be headline grabbing more when you're in F2. But
Yeah.
he's been with Williams for a few years. He's been embedded in the team, so they really knew what he was doing, even if he wasn't grabbing the headlines. He had a few great feature race wins last season. But generally, it's really difficult to show off, even though you're on the same weekends as Formula One bosses. Look at Felipe Drugovich, runaway champion, not looking like he's going to get a Grand Prix start this weekend after all, reserved with Aston Martin. So 4th place driver, you wonder, is this an absolute top tier guy for Formula One?
Yep.
And I know he's had some decent drives in F3 and F2, but he's been really impressive through these practice sessions so far.
You can hear from his boss, James Vales, the new team principal at Williams, will be joining us in 11 minutes and 22 seconds time. As we check in with the 7-time champion of the world on the soft tyres, Lewis Hamilton is round the final real corner of this racetrack. He doesn't use all of the curb, but he is going to improve. Fastest in the first sector and the second. He comes across the line, and it's Russell across the line. I'm going to make a note of that. Similar helmet designs. And Russell initially went fastest. Hamilton beats him by 1/10.5 and a bit more. And he gets out of the way of an arm coming down to turn 1. I think that's Albon. He wasn't joking about struggling with the brakes. And he went sailing on by.
Yeah. Launched it in towards the first corner there. Good lap from Hamilton. Good lap. Missed a little bit compared to Russell in the final sector, but overall was ahead, as he has been so far this weekend. It's a better lap for the Mercedes, but we wait now for the Red Bulls. Verstappen is on the soft tyre on an out lap. Alonso is on the soft tyre on an out lap, so we're going to get a very quick comparison. On the face of it, looks tidier from them.
We were speaking about Felipe Drugovich a few seconds ago. The Formula 2 champion of last year would have been dreaming of a Grand Prix debut.
Yeah, my rears are so hot already to start with.
Yeah, copy, noticed that.
Rear tyres, too hot to start with, so we've seen some very slow outlaps. We just saw one there with Max starting his flying lap now, but was very slow on the outlap. Got to cool the softs. Maybe that's why there's a little bit more on the table for Lewis in that final sector. Bit of overheating.
Right, Max Verstappen attacking the racetrack, not on a hard tyre, on a soft tyre. Soft is available to him this weekend. DRS Open tells you that he is going to...
If we've got time, I'm happy to come through. Small flap adjust, right at the start my next.
Eva, just say what you'd like on the aero balance.
Minus 0.7.
Damage as he climbs the hill to the ever tricky turn 9 and 10.
And Alonso on exactly the same first sector time as well. Middle sector's where most of the time is. It's the tightest corners, the fiddliest part, which Max has just negotiated there, and it's the longest sector. So this is where you can win and lose the biggest chunk of time around the lap. On board with Max into turn 11. Again, using a lot of entry curb. Neat and tidy, no corrections at the wheel there, looking more hooked up.
Surely this is going to be a step forward. It is by 2.5 tenths of a second. Previewed that this is the part of the racetrack where he is devastating, proving it once again. So 2 tenths ahead of Hamilton's benchmark. Alonso, same racetrack, same tyre, a little bit of a correction for Verstappen as he comes across the line. Keeps his foot pinned to the floor, goes fastest by 2 tenths of a second, and we await the effort from Fernando Alonso. We go on board as he responds to the two-time champion, and he goes fastest by 5 thousandths of a second. And it's Alonso and Verstappen 1 and 2, Hamilton in third. The top 3 world championships everywhere you look between those 3 drivers. Esteban Ocon's time is good enough for 7th.
Best final sector of anyone for Fernando Alonso. Verstappen was slightly on that curb as he was getting on the throttle out at the final corner and just broke traction ever so slightly, couldn't drive to the line. So maybe there's a little bit more out there, but the rest of the lap looked fairly clean. And the Red Bull not up the road on the soft tyre. I thought they'd find a bit more than that. Not up the road. In fact, Alonso's back to the top of their times in that Aston Martin. At what point do we just think that maybe they are in contention for pole?
At what point do we look at the timing page and go, oh yeah, P1 might mean...
Currently still P1.
Oh, really? Okay.
2 years to the day that he started in Formula 1. Oldest driver in the field.
Currently still P1.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's getting accustomed to it now, isn't he? Imagine being in the team as well. Being the Aston Martin crew who were Racing Point, were Force India, with Jordan, Spiker Midland. I mean, this is a midfield. It's an upper-performing midfield team through and through, with good investment, with a top driver now, and all the guys in the garage on the pit wall. They must just be thinking, Are we in amongst the big boys? Are we actually going to be there? We're going to have to take on the top guns of the sport, the greatest teams. Could happen.
His last pole position, Germany 2012. That was in the wet as well. That was a wet session. So
just comparing to Alonso, 7, 9 and 11 are the main losses to Alonso.
Grand Prix, they could be racing each other wheel to wheel. Eventually, you can't ignore the data on screen. Alonso's slightly surprised by that, but if you're one of our newer fans and you're unfamiliar with the work of Fernando Alonso, he might only 2-time world champion. Phenomenal work in his career, but there are many in the paddock that his talent far exceeds.
And then we are boxed this lap. Stopping in front of our garage, you'll have to drive around Oscar, who will be in front of his.
Off the top step, and he was back in 1990. So that was in the Williams for Petresi.
Would have been
6.5 years that was.
Let's check in with Sergio Perez. We were talking about the car's behaviour for both drivers. See what Mexican driver can do at the moment. On for a personal best in the session, not too far away from Fernando Alonso's benchmark. A driver that's been on the podium 2 times here before, lost 2 podiums as well due to mechanical failures, you remember last year, and he had a late engine expiry when he was racing for Racing Point. He came back next week, won the Grand Prix, so he's probably forgotten that, but he's got a good record around here. He's got the 3rd fastest time around here. That final sector for Alonso proving very useful indeed. Alonso, Verstappen and Perez, slightly rejiggled order from our top 3 yesterday. This is fascinating. This is fascinating. Even for practice, we did not expect to see Fernando Alonso topping timing pages. Red Bull, who put in a devastating lap on the hard tyre earlier on the soft, still sparring with Fernando.
They're not up the road, and they're not up the road from Mercedes either. This is a much better showing from Mercedes than yesterday. Hamilton just a tenth away from Perez, 2 away from Verstappen. It's interesting. Aston Martin they've always had a car.
Tear off the spot. Left rear.
Okay, copy. We'll keep an eye on it.
The Pirelli tyre, as soon as it came in, very well. And you think of some of the good performances from Perez in the past in that car as Racing Point, all Force India.
Yep.
Some of the surprise podiums that he pulled out, the surprise win that he got on the short circuit here. It's always been a strength. And even last year, you look at Vettel and Stroll, they were poor in qualifying a lot, but came through in the race.
Tear off the spot. Left rear.
Okay, copy. We'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, let's go tyre 7, recharge off, and downshift test for turn 11. You can run like that through turn 13 or so.
Still flapping around somewhere. I wonder if, especially in the hotter temperatures here, there's something in the tyres for Aston Martin where they've got a good handle on their tyres. Slightly new front construction, Pirelli tyre, but particularly the rears, whether they're, especially in the hotter temperatures now, if they've just found something, and that would help the final sector particularly. That'd be a bit of a magic bullet for them. Their race runs have been looking tidy.
Yeah, it was the one lap pace where they were expected to maybe be in arrears, but Alonso is ahead of Verstappen, then Perez, a step forward for Mercedes. Hamilton saying yesterday, team needs to find a second, questioning the concept of the car. Stroll, half a second off his teammate's benchmark, but looking a lot more comfortable today than he did yesterday, encouraging that he's not appeared in the same discomfort. I know not as long running, but no, doesn't appear to be any ill effects from what we saw yesterday. Oscar Piastri up in 7th as he awaits his maiden Formula One qualifying session. The top 10 rounded out by Esteban Ocon, who set that lap in the most recent runs. So did Joe Guan Yu. Lando Norris has gone up to 10th.
Much better day for Piastri so far. Looked a little bit out of sorts yesterday, but he's been on it from the first run and the second run, ahead of Norris in today's running. McLaren, both guys in the top 10 for now, but the two Ferraris completing laps, and look how close Leclerc is.
Everybody set the lap already on soft now.
Yes, yeah, a lot of them went earlier, so all the times are set. So you have
So where are we?
P12, Kevin's P11, we're at 33.4, and like P8 is 33.1, so like 3/10 in it. It's 5/10 to P6.
It's only 5th place. That final sector, not his friend, really. If you consider that he was close in the middle part of the lap, and then it didn't work out by the end. Much tighter. We would very much take a qualifying session where the top 5 is separated by 0.2 of a second. Yes, please, sign us up.
Happy days, isn't it? Happy days right now. And Aston Martin on top. 2 Red Bulls nibbling away. Perez very close to Verstappen still. Has Max got another level, another gear to go up, or is Checo wintered well, studied it all, and come back with a vengeance? And then the Mercedes closer. Ferrari going to be disappointed there. Leclerc is 3/10 up on Sainz, but still 3/10 away from Alonso. And they've gone right at the death. We're about to get the checker flag. They've given themselves the best opportunity by waiting for the last moment, the most rubber in track, and there's still a little bit of drift. So as close as it is, they've not had a good session again. 3 out of 3 disappointing practices, I think.
Felipe Drugovich and Stoffel Van Dorn down there. Be hearing from Felipe Drugovich on the post-race show here on F1 TV.
Didn't look very happy, did they?
That's what happens if you're a reserve driver and you don't get your chance.
Another day. Take the headset. Listen in.
Checkered flag is out. Session is complete. The next time the cars are on the circuit, it will be for the first pole position of the season. And it is Fernando Alonso who has topped 2 sessions in a row, 1 under the floodlights, 1 in the warm conditions. Who out there is beginning to believe that we could have an incredible story to start Formula One in 2023. A recap of the lap that took him top of the page. So it was strong all the way round. Hamilton actually fastest in the first sector. Max Verstappen dominant in that middle part of the lap. That's where he looks so comfortable. And Fernando Alonso's third and final part of the lap that begins in the entry to turn 13 and concludes the start-finish line. Good enough for the fastest time. Could he really do it? Could we see the old lion roaring again in Formula One?
We're going to see the roar. Is it going to be from the front of the grid? That's what we'll find out later on. I just think yesterday he thought there was a little bit more to come. Today, Fernando, you're P1. Oh, really? Great. He wasn't expecting it. You're probably not. You're not expecting it when you're in an Aston Martin at the moment. Is the belief going to be?
So I think this will probably go red on exit. This will probably go red on exit. Just keep an eye for it. It will come and get you.
Come on, guys. Missed this twice now.
So that was timing. Yesterday we had outlap critical for Hamilton. As the red light at the end of the pit lane, you can't go through. That would be a trip to the stewards if that was the case. So Hamilton parking up. You can only recover the car from the boundary lines of the pit lane. And so he's having to park up in the middle of nowhere and be wheeled back.
Meanwhile, underneath our commentary box, Fernando Alonso does a couple of burnouts, gets ready for a practice start, off of pole position as well.
That is
lining it up at the front in pole position, and Lewis Hamilton has missed that opportunity because Mercedes were too late in sending him out. A little bit sloppy. You could hear the frustration in Lewis's voice. You got to take every opportunity you can get some practice starts, get some data as well, get the clutch metrics worked out for the all-important getaway on tomorrow now. Blimey, it's come around quick.
We've been doing an awful lot of broadcasting around this circuit, but the story, the headline, the possibility, it's worth sticking with us. Will it be the firm favourites Red Bull? Will it be Sergio Perez taking a pole position at the start of the season? Can Max Verstappen give himself the best possibility of doing something that he's never done in his career and win a season opener? The last time Fernando Alonso was on the front row for a season opener in Formula One, Melbourne in 2007. And who roared past him at the first corner to say, I'm in Formula One? Lewis Hamilton. That's how long ago it was. Lewis Hamilton's first Grand Prix was the last time Fernando Alonso was on the front row of a season opener.
The beautiful thing is, it looks like it's going to be close. Alonso's going to be in the mix. The pace now of the Aston Martin is proven. Antic stall for Verstappen then. And then a really stodgy getaway as he re-engaged the clutch and released it. That's why you do the practice starts. You've got to work these things out now. It's the last chance they're going to get to do a practice start before before tomorrow. They'll go around to the grid and do one, but all the data is important. Alonso, they're in the mix, Aston Martin. Now it's the finer details. Who has been carrying a little bit more fuel? Who has got the extra bit of wick to turn up on the engines? Surely it's just going to come down to tenths. You're not going to be lost.
Guess who was also pulled up in pole position? Sergio Perez. Just like Alonso, just like...
I think I dropped it a little bit too deep. Therefore, I held the pedal a little bit longer to avoid too much wheel spin.
Copy that. Keep opening the gap, please. And this one was close to target. This one was close to target.
Copy, but too much wheel spin.
Confirmed.
At the start of a season that Fernando Alonso has topped 2 of the 3 practice sessions before we start the year. The man that turns 42 this year. Is he going to join Nigel Mansell as a modern Grand Prix winner in his 40s at some point this year? Anyway, we'll stop asking hype questions. We'll start recapping the practice 3 result that saw Fernando Alonso top the timing page for the second session in a row. Max Verstappen needed to find a little bit in the final sector, looked mighty in the middle part of the lap, and Sergio Perez there or thereabouts, as he has been since the start of Formula One testing in pre-season. Lewis Hamilton looking a lot better, and he was in 4th. Charles Leclerc, our pole position holder last year, was in 5th, and it was Russell, Stroll, Sainz, Piastri inside the top 10. Gasly rounding out the top half of the field. Esteban Ocon was in 11th. Then it was Zhou Guanyu in 12th. Then came Lando Norris. Kevin Magnussen, 14th, ahead of his teammate, in a contrast to what we saw last night under the floodlights. Then it's Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri. Valtteri Bottas, 2 times a pole position winner here, 17th. Sargent, Albon, and De Vries complete the field. 1.7 seconds between absolutely everyone. My thanks to Jolyon Palmer for his insights across free practice. The real thing is coming your way later on. We'll turn the lights on and we will have some sort of spectacle under the floodlights. It looks wide open for the opening pole position of the year, which we will enjoy later on. For now, though, thanks for your company. We'll send it downstairs to Laura Winter.
Thanks very much, Alex Yates and Jolyon Palmer in commentary. Welcome to Lawrence Bretter and Will Buxton, who join me here in the paddock. And of course, we start this post-analysis where we started the pre-build-up outside Aston Martin. I'm believing in this now. Can you imagine? I'm going to get way ahead of myself here. Pole position, 22 years to the date.